Welcome, 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 everyone. Welcome to Black Man Speak. I'm your co-host, the impeccable, most insightful, the J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3 Jimmy. It is Wednesday, March the 6th, 2024. And if it is Wednesday night,
It's certainly Black Man Speak. So let's shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music into Forest Films in our own studio. If you haven't, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. If you're here watching, invite a friend to come watch it with you so you guys have something interesting to talk about. And if you're one of our many supporters who watch the show after hours, then be free to take the link, copy it to your social media, and spread the word. This is the most informative social media show, talk show, dealing with Black folks on the internet.
absolutely, Jimmy. So we want to thank everyone who is joining us on the chat line. Ms. Audrey K. Booker, want to thank you for being there, being the first in the chat line. Also, my good friend and brother, Uncle Asa
In the house, okay,
out of the Austin area as well. The premier spokesperson for Pan-Africanism.
Yes, he is.
We had him on at the end of last year. We're going to actually have Uncle Assar back pretty soon. We want to send our condolences, Jimmy. I know you didn't know this, but he lost his sweet dear mother this past week. She was just funeralized, so definitely want to send our condolences out and our heartfelt prayers to him and his family.
Yes, did not know that, but yes.
Absolutely. And then also we have Miss Dominique Bindings out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. We want to thank her for joining us this evening as well. So what we're going to do is get started with our birthdays, Jimmy. And we've actually kind of skipped the last few weeks. We had a couple of folks who have transitioned to the realm of ancestors. So we're going to acknowledge a couple of folks who we've lost that some of you probably know over the last month, as opposed to waiting to the end of the year. So let's go ahead and get to those birthdays and get this party started,
Sure.
Right? Jimmy, for those of you who like comedy shows, we have a big birthday today. D.L. Hughley, born on March the 6th. I won't tell the year for his sake, but great comedian, of course. And we wish him a very, very happy birthday. Hope he is out enjoying it and painting the town red.
Yeah, very funny guy.
All right, we have another comedian, except we got a sister this time. Jimmy, you probably know this face as well, Miss Wanda Sykes.
Oh, yeah, Wanda Sykes.
Wanda Sykes, man, she is too funny and has an uppercut on her comedy, Jimmy, that you have to be waiting for, but also a great comedian as well. Wanda Sykes, her birthday is tomorrow.
And she certainly could have even been one of the queens of comedy, Tom. She's that talented.
Yeah, so we had D.L. Hughley, who is one of the kings of comedy, and Wanda Sykes, who is definitely one of the queens of comedy. So definitely an early happy birthday wish to you. Jimmy, I know that you are a big sports fan and a big basketball fan, so I know that you're going to know this face. The great Kenny Smith, played at one of the Blue Blood schools in Carolina. Also, one of the great all-stars with the Houston Rockets, but has rebounded and changed his career after he got off the field and has been very successful as an analyst in many of the basketball games you'll see. So his birthday is coming up on March the 8th. So early happy birthday wish. Hope you have a fantastic birthday. Okay, Jimmy, for those of you who love music and who love crooners, this gentleman here has a birthday coming up on March the 9th. The smooth Jeffrey Osborne.
Boy, Jeffrey, what happened to his hair?
Well, he shaved it off, Jimmy. I think he wanted to, save some money going to the barbershop, Jimmy.
Okay. Yes, Jeffrey is very smooth.
Oh, very, very smooth. On the March the 9th and on March the 11th, another great voice, Jimmy, Miss Cheryl Lynn.
Yes, okay.
Has a birthday coming up on March the 11th. Just a beautiful melodic voice, beautiful sister, very talented. Of course, Jimmy sung a lot of great songs as well.
Yes, she did.
So All right, Jimmy, let's now get to some folks that we have missed that unfortunately have gone into the realms of our ancestors. For those of you who've been in the music game for a long time, especially folks like my father and some folks who love the old school harmonizing, Henry Fambro, this face here, you may not be familiar with them because really they were at the top of the game back in the 60s and 70s. But I know this was one of my father's favorite songs and spinners. Just died last month, February 7th, at the tender age of
Man, no,
85.
the spinners are great, Tom. They are gold.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
the spinners growing up.
Exactly. He was the last surviving original member of the Spinners. He is known for hits like It's a Shame. That was one of my favorites. Could It Be I'm Falling in Love? And
Yep.
Jimmy, probably my all-time favorite when I was growing up, young guy in the 70s, was the Rubber Band Man.
The very first concert I ever attended was the Spinners.
You're kidding me.
No, I was probably about maybe 8 or 9 years old. But yes, the very first, it was the Spinners and the Whispers.
Gotcha. Oh, man. Spinners and the Whistles. That was a good concert. I guarantee you.
And I wasn't old enough to appreciate the greatness of it till I got older and started comparing the music of the 60s and 70s to what they put out today. And that's why 95% of my music collection is from the 60s.
Yep. All right. Next, Robert Reed, the great Robert Reed from the Houston Rockets, died on February the 19th at the age of 68. Jimmy, former NBA All-Star, played 10 seasons with the Houston Rockets. You probably know him. I definitely remember Robert Reed.
I remember.
Helped lead the Rockets to their first 2 NBA Finals. Passed away, Jimmy, unfortunately, after a bout with cancer. But now he is definitely in a much better place. And so our condolences and prayers, to the family.
Was it prostate cancer, Tom?
What's that now?
Was it prostate cancer?
It wasn't specific as to the type of cancer, but it's possible that it could have been prostate cancer.
Let's take a moment, Tom. If you're over 50, make sure you get your exam every 5 years. After 60, get it every couple of years. Generally with that prostate cancer and colon cancer, they catch it early enough. It's not a matter if you're going to get it. It's just a matter of when you're going to get it if you're a male. So, we're all living with this time bomb inside of us. These cells are going to morph into a cancer one day. So let's catch it early. Go out there and get your exam. I know it's not fun, but it's a necessary evil to stay on top of your health.
You're correct. It's better to have to deal with that few minutes of uncomfortable moments than have to deal with the repercussions of that.
That's
all right,
true.
Jimmy. Next, we have a lovely young lady. Some of you may not know her face, but she's been on Broadway. She's been on television, and we just lost her. Name is Linda Kravitz. You may have seen her, on some TV shows, but she just died February the 23rd at the age of 77. She was an acclaimed actress known for her appearances on Broadway, in addition to several roles on television. Jimmy, at the tender age of 4, she was on the original Broadway production of The King and I, and by 9, she had already had recitals on Carnegie Hall, but she had also played in A Raisin in the Sun, Crown's Miss Witherspoon, and the Little Foxes, Jimmy, in addition to some television appearances on Law and Order and The Good Wife. So we definitely send our condolences out to the family and loved ones of Miss Linda Kravitz. And last, but definitely not least, we have Miss Janice Burgess. Probably don't know this face, Jimmy, but you probably know some of the work that she's done. She just passed a little bit under a week ago. She was a television executive with Nickelodeon, joined Nickelodeon in 1995 as an executive in charge of production, was a television executive, screenwriter, and producer for Nickelodeon, known best for creating the Nick Jr. series and the Backyardigans.
Oh, okay.
So for those of you who may have had kids who have been watching Nickelodeon, or even adults out there who love
I watch
Nickelodeon.
Nick at Night sometime myself now. I'm a Nickelodeon fan.
Exactly. So, those are, some of the, we're losing giants, in and out. Some of the faces, some of the faces don't, Jimmy, but we make sure that we acknowledge those folks who have become ancestors. And again, Jimmy, as we talked about last month, we are also 12 months of Black history and 12 months of Black
Black
excellence,
history
not
is
just.
every day for this channel, Tom.
Exactly. So with that being said, Jimmy, we have at least, I think, a video or two that we want to show during this show so we can make sure that folks know we are not just talking the talk, but walking the walk as well. So I'm going to let you choose our first video for the day
Oh, okay.
before we get into our
Let's,
stories.
let's go with the Tank Battalion, the Black Panthers, the original Black Panthers.
All right.
Activated in 1942, the 761st, known as the Black Panthers, was one of the few segregated units in the U.S. Army during a time of racial inequality. Trained at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, these soldiers faced not only the rigors of war preparation but also the challenges of discrimination within their own ranks. Despite facing adversity, the soldiers of the 761st received specialized training and demonstrated exceptional skills, especially in tank warfare. Their journey through training was a testament to their commitment and determination to overcome racial prejudices.
All right.
So there's a full documentary on the 761 Tank Battalion, narrated by Morgan Freeman.
Nice.
I think it's on one of the streaming networks. I just can't remember which one because Glenn gave me the tip. But if you get a chance, go check it out. I watched it and it was very informative, Tom. They were one of the first to break through the Nazi lines and to free a lot of folks out of these concentration camps. So very interesting. They don't get the recognition that they deserve for what they did fighting the Germans.
Yep, absolutely, folks. And again, that's why we have to have shows and platforms like Black Men Speak to give you the history that you're not, unfortunately, going to get traditionally in your schools. And sometimes, folks, even though we advocate for making sure that you build your own library of history of your community's accomplishments, these are the things that we want to share so that you can do your own research. Don't just believe us, but know that we got the facts. But before we go to our first story, I want to thank Brother Asar. He did just acknowledge that today is Ghana's Independence Day, March the 6th.
Congratulations to them.
They became a sovereign nation on March the 6th, 1957, which makes them, Jimmy, only 67 years old as a sovereign nation, of course, after being imperialized and raped, pillaged, and plundered by the so-called great country of the United Kingdom and or England as well. So happy Independence Day to all of our Ghanaian friends out there. Keep fighting a good fight. And most importantly, as we say, advocate for your own independence. Don't continue to allow your country to be controlled by other countries in terms of politics, economics, or anything else. And I only speak for myself in making sure that, we are a lot more powerful in this country as a Black community when our brothers and sisters on the African continent are controlling their own destiny as well.
Well, that's true, Tom. That is true.
All right, we're going to start off this evening with a story that we closed out, but really didn't have a lot of time to talk about it because we had such a spirited conversation on so many things last week. But we talked about the video that went viral last week with Cam Newton during his 7-on-7 sports camp, Jimmy. And I wanted to go ahead and kind of finish that out. We kind of ran out of time last week, but, for those who are not big sports fans, Cam Newton, number one pick in the NFL draft in 2011, went to a Super Bowl. Well, he's retired since then, but a video that was sent out a little bit over a week ago showed a confrontation with Cam Newton and a couple of folks who allegedly jumped on him. On February 25th, footage of a fight went viral on social media, which three men allegedly attempted to jump the former NFL MVP, Cam Newton. Newton, who took on the attackers, kept his signature hat on the entire time. And following the incident, no charges were filed. But, at the end of the day, Newton did take time to address the incident, apologizing for allowing the incident to escalate to the point where it did, and trying to I guess take the high road and taking ownership and responsibility for what happened. During the interview, Newton alleged that two brothers who used to be part of his program and are now a part of another sports program were also involved in the incident with him. And he said there had been somewhat of a long history between the two organizations, just trash talking back and forth between sports teams and sports camps. But for those of you who do not know, Cam Newton, he was drafted first overall in the 2011 NFL draft, played his first 9 seasons with the Carolina Panthers, played 1 season, I think it was, Jimmy, with the New England Patriots before turning on a brief stint.
Yes, he
back
did.
to the
That
Carolina
season with New England.
So
And
we started.
I would say that that was probably the mature thing to do, to accept some responsibility for your part. It wasn't all his fault, but I can certainly understand how these things escalate and get out of control when really the two organizations, or all the organizations that are involved in 7-on-7, should conduct themselves a little more professional. You're trying to attract kids and talent to your organizations, to your league, to prepare them either for college or for the pros or what comes after that. So I understand, but you can't have fights and outbursts like this on that just can't be part of it, of the calculus. So, but I'm glad to see that he stepped up and did the mature thing. I haven't heard anyone else stepping up, Tom. So that just leads me to believe that he's the bigger person here. So he gets kudos from me. I didn't like the watching the video. I never like seeing us painted in a bad light. And when you're a celebrity, I know the intensity is intensified multiple folds when a celebrity is involved. If he wasn't involved and it was just 3 or 4 people fighting on the field, no one would care. But you throw Cam Newton in, and all of a sudden it goes viral. So I'm glad he did the right thing. And
yeah, Jimmy, and on top of this, I mean, this is not a small guy. Cam Newton's about 6'6", probably 260 pounds or so. It's funny, but it looked like an unfair fight, even though 3 guys jumped him as he was slinging folks all over the place, Jimmy. And he actually established this 7-on-7 camp when the year that he was drafted. So he's had this camp for over a decade.
Okay.
And unfortunately, he's done a lot of good. He's from Atlanta, Georgia, by the way. And so he has invested a lot in that community, trying to set up an environment where kids can learn from the insight from folks who have played it at its highest level. And, we kind of understand the history because we're sports fans about Cam Newton. But, it's strange that when you have folks who are really doing good things, you may have 10, 50, 100 things right you're doing. They don't ever talk about it. They don't talk about the investment that he's made, the millions of dollars that he's poured into this camp, the lives of young people. And unfortunately, you have something that happens like this. And, this is, kind of the one thing that they want to show in the news in order to get clickbait or whatever it is, because I don't recall them ever having anything about the good that he has been doing in the Atlantic.
It's great every single day, and all it takes is one bad thing, one misjudgment, and that's what gets highlighted. So we know how it goes, especially with Black celebrities. So this is why we have to be very careful. But in the case when 3 men jump you and you're defending yourself, you can't avoid that. So he did what he had to do, Tom. He accepted responsibility for his part in it, even though he was really just defending himself. So there's really no need to apologize, but I'm sure he was apologizing for the fact that it happened, not that he started or he was responsible for it. So
the other unfortunate thing about this, Jimmy, is that there are a lot of former athletes out there who have the resource, quite frankly, have the time to invest into community, to invest into young folks. But unfortunately, things like this don't encourage them to do that. And there are some who straight out said, you know what, there is too much reputational damage to be done by getting involved. And if they do, they just kind of show up briefly and then they leave, and then folks kind of talk bad about them. But, when folks really get involved, and from my understanding, Cam Newton really gets hands-on involved. in his camp. He doesn't just leave it to the people who are part of his organization. And unfortunately, Jimmy, this is why a lot of folks who have the cadre, who have the fame, don't get involved with these types of things, especially at an intimate level, because, folks don't really appreciate it. I heard there was a lot of, some pretty bad words that were said. Folks who were little kids in high school who were disrespecting them because, of course, a few years ago when everything was going on, with him, not being signed, him leaving the Panthers after he left the Patriots, folks who were literally talking about him, to his face. And these are guys who should really be trying to learn from someone who's figured out how to play at the right level. And unfortunately, they didn't show very much respect for him at the time. I'm not saying that's everybody, but, social media, too much access, not always a good thing.
Well, Tom, that's why being a celebrity sometimes can be like a poison drug. You get hooked on it. You want the fans to adore you and the adulation that you receive when you're on the top of your game. But as soon as you can't entertain them, you can't throw the ball, run the ball, hit the ball, you get tossed aside really quickly. And I understand, that this could be a hurting feeling on their part. But this is why you should focus your time and attention to more meaningful things than celebrity. Get involved with some charity work, raise money for a charity, go read a book to some kids, encourage them to stay in school, make good grades. These are things that you can do. And it doesn't matter if anyone recognizes you for doing it. The kids that are there that you're showing some attention to, hopefully they would care that you took a few minutes out of your precious time to come show them some interest. So, outside of sports and celebrity is not everything. It's a thing, and then once it's over with, move on in life. Find other ways to contribute in a way that you don't have to be fearful of getting involved. Maybe your involvement is not sports, but so what? Maybe it's just every now and then you go to a school and read a book to somebody, or you have a conversation and encourage them to stay in school as opposed to pursuing sports, and let them know just how hard it is to make it in professional sports. For those that are dreaming of getting there one day, and this dream may not be realistic. We know how many don't make it for the very 1/10 of 1% that even have a chance of even getting into the college ranks, and then only a few of them actually make it to the pros. So it's a very hard profession to break into, and but I'm glad he's doing something positive with his. He's trying to. He's doing a lot more time than a lot of these worthless celebrity types that are out here doing nothing and hiding behind the shield of, well, I don't want to expose myself and get wrapped up in something negative. Man, do something positive with your life. Do something where you can make a difference. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be sports, Tom.
That is very true. So again, we've got to do better. We've got to set a good example. For those of us who are parents out there, we've got to make sure that, we go back to some of those old-fashioned values that you talked about, Jimmy, respecting your elders. Not that they're always right, but at least respect them for their opinion, just like you would want to be respected for the.
But Tom, they are more often right than wrong. Our elders have lived a lot of life. They have a lot of experience and knowledge. We may think they're old-fashioned, don't know what's going on out here, but Tom, they've lived a lot of life, and sometimes to pause and listen to what they have to say is very valuable. I enjoy talking to old people. Now I'm an old person, so but people older than me, I've always enjoyed talking to old people, Tom, because they seem to have a wisdom and knowledge in them, and not enough of us listen to what they have to say. But if you take time out to listen to their stories, their adventures, the things they had to go through, you start realizing that what you think is tough on you is really not tough compared to what they had to go through to achieve a lot less than you will just take for granted. So, yeah, listen to the elders, Tom.
Exactly. And you got to understand that, to your point, we are of a generation, Jimmy, that at one point in time, we didn't even have protected legal right to vote for a lot of us. That really just came around when we were born or were very young kids, so to speak. But our parents and grandparents actually lived through legal segregation, where they could not even go to certain restaurants, not restaurants, but restrooms, because there were, white only and black only restrooms. They couldn't go to the restaurant. They had to go to the back. I mean, we've talked about this before, Jimmy, but Jackie Robinson could not even go to the front door for a celebration for him. He could not go to the front door for a celebration for him and his wife. So they lived through all of this stuff. And so they know a lot more than we think they do, even though, they may have come before you.
And Tom, when it may seem like they're trying to downplay what you're going through, but what they're really trying to tell you is that they've seen hell. And maybe your life is a little hellish, but they've seen hell and lived through it. And they're just trying to tell you that since they survived and were able to get along with it, that you can too. It's not that they're trying to minimize what's going on today. It's just they look at the landscape and say, man, I wish we had the opportunities you have. With access to knowledge, information, opportunities that you have. We could have done a lot more in our lifetime. And so don't waste what you have. The playing field may not be fair. You may look at it and say, well, it's still unfair in a lot of ways, but that's just life. But still, you have a lot more than the ancestors ever had. So take what's available to you and make the best of it. And then, because one day there may be the next generation, coming to you one day, telling you how tough it is and why they can't get ahead. And you may be looking at their life in the landscape and saying, man, I know your life is a little hellish, but I've gone through hell. So let's always encourage each other, each generation, Tom, to move forward, to learn from the past so we don't repeat it, allow history to repeat itself. Because like our frat brother Tony Brown reminds us, that he who does not understand history is doomed to repeat it. And we can't afford to have any of our history repeated. So we need to constantly look forward and move forward. And every generation needs to be making accomplishments and doing better than the previous generation. That needs to be the challenge and the goal to our young people growing up. And then anything that we can do to assist them in that plan, Tom, is what we do. But every generation needs to get out here and make it happen, Tom. And so we need to be looking forward and encouraging our young people as best as possible. But they need to listen, Tom. Don't just discount what we have to say because you think you know it all.
This is true, Jimmy. I guess the one challenge that I would say that a lot of younger people have with that, generationally speaking, is that, it has to be a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
I know sometimes they think you don't really understand us. We live in a different generation. The things you guys go through, we have a different set of challenges, and to a certain degree they do. That's not to discount what the elders have gone through in their lives, but with the millennials and to a higher degree, the zennials, they want to be listened to as well. And so as a result, a lot of times you have to sit down and listen to them in order to get that respect. It goes both ways. And then as a result of that, you're able to do that knowledge share from one generation to the next, Jimmy, and we've got to have something to pass the torch to. We've got to have some legacy to pass that torch to. But where I have to agree with you 200% is that if you don't understand your history, then you are doomed to repeat it. And we've got to pass that history on to the next generation.
Yes, we do, Tom. Hey, did you say we have someone on from the ATL?
Yes, we do. Miss Dominique Binding. She is from Atlanta, Georgia. Or she's not from there, but she lives there. She's from Chicago, but she lives in Atlanta, Georgia.
I would love to get Miss Dominique opinion on what's going on with Miss Fani Willis down there and get her opinion or feedback, since she's local to the area. Hopefully she has access to a lot more information than we do, only listen to the national coverage. Anyway, okay. What's our next news story, Tom?
All right, Jimmy. We have a grandmother in the state of Colorado who has just been awarded $3.76 million after a jury, after her home was illegally searched and ransacked in 2022 by a SWAT raid for what was allegedly a stolen truck, guns, and an iPhone based upon information from Apple's Find My app. The jury sided with Ruby Johnson, 78 years of age, and determined that Denver Police Detective Gary Staub and Sergeant Gregory Bushy violated the state's constitution by hastily seeking and obtaining and executing a search warrant on her home without probable cause or a proper investigation into the issue, Jimmy. So to talk a little bit more, the SWAT team had ransacked Ms. Johnson's home of 43 years based upon an alleged location ping from the iPhone's My Find app that the officers did not understand or for which they had any training for. Ms. Johnson lived alone in her home and was in her robe, bonnet, and slippers when she was subjected to a police raid. It was kind of a bad situation, Jimmy. After the internal affairs review, there was no formal discipline for the officers. The lawsuit brought under the provision of a police reform bill that was passed in 2020 after the highly publicized murder of George Floyd. State lawmakers established the right to sue individual police officers for state constitutional violations in state court. Before that, it made it very difficult for people to file lawsuits, and they typically had to do it in a federal court.
So I kind of remember some of the story, Tom, and it's actually a little more egregious than what we've shared here. They wouldn't even let her go change her clothes to put in something more appropriate. So she was detained in her house. And here's a lady at her age; she's of no threat to anyone, and to have an officer actually have to physical restrain her and keep her from moving, as if she's going to, I don't know, go and hide the evidence now that they're there, or do something to be disruptive. When you invade a person's home that way, I understand you have a warrant. They give you the right to search, but Tom, if they don't feel comfortable the way they're dressed around you in a robe and their night clothes, there should be nothing wrong with a person being able to grab some clothes and at least be properly dressed where they feel safe and secure with people going through their house, ramshacking their house.
And this is a senior citizen on top of that. So, I mean, again, these folks are trained in a certain way, and I understand that, they deal with some very bad.
They are trained a certain way, but it's the attitude sometimes of not treating people with dignity and care because you think they're criminals. So especially even if she was a ringleader of a criminal organization, she's still 70, 80 years old, Tom, and she's there by herself. And at least you can make her feel comfortable in what you're doing without distressing her and stressing her out under those conditions. I mean, it's already stressful enough when the cops come knock on your door in the middle of the night. But then the ramshack your house, and then when they're done, Tom, they don't put it back. They don't clean up the mess they made. They don't put the clothes back in the drawer. They don't. I mean, they just start pulling stuff out and dumping it. You got all kind of cleanup to do after they leave your house under a search. So I feel for the young lady. I hope she collects every penny of it. But Tom, unfortunately, this doesn't hurt enough. If there was anyone who needs a much larger judgment to send a message, this should be one of those cases. Instead of 3.7 million, it should have been 37 million.
Gotcha. So she got 1.26 million in compensatory damages, 2.5 million in punitive damages. I think that's light. I mean, I think unfortunately, Jimmy, because of the trauma associated with it, I think she may have ended up moving away from the house. I don't know if that's permanently, but you've been in the house for 40-something odd years. SWAT team comes in from no place, puts you outside. You're in your pajamas. You're literally, struck with fear. You're thinking you might lose your life, Jimmy, and then it's like, oh, sorry, and then they leave you.
Have guns.
How do you feel safe in your own home?
Right.
After being completely disrespected like that anytime somebody can bust in your door and they don't treat you with any respect. And this is
that's true, Tom. That's very true. And I'm glad she got. I hate that she had to move. I'm pretty sure she probably wanted to move after that experience. And I'm glad she was able to get paid for her pain. But there's probably no amount of money that's ever going to make her feel safe again after an experience like that. So
very true. And how could you after an experience like that?
Okay.
All right. We got another story, Jimmy, and I think it would probably be a good time after this next story to have our next history segment.
Sure. What do we have?
Minnesota lawmakers are now working on a compromise to give police officers working in schools, clearer authority to use force. Minnesota recently passed Minnesota passed a series of police accountability measures in response to the 2020 murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, which included restrictions on the use of force such as chokeholds. A section of a broad education law enacted last year led 40 police departments in Minnesota to pull their officers from schools. They said the new restriction on the use of face-down prone restraints, which can impair breathing, made it impossible for them to do their jobs. So the Minnesota House voted 124-8 to pass a change backed by law enforcement that's meant to ensure that school resource officers can use prone restraints on students. The new law would also require better training and the creation of a model policy on the duties of police who work in schools. It expressly prohibits officers from being used to impose discipline for violation of school policies, though. The bill, which was led by Democratic Representative Cedric Frazier of New Hope, said that the training requirements and development of the model policy are a centerpiece of the legislation, and that the process will provide opportunities for community groups as well as law enforcement to weigh in.
Okay, Tom. So we've covered this, and I'm just going to give my 2 cents opinion once again about the whole George Floyd situation. The tactics that the police use is what they were trained and were taught in their police academy. These things have been used over and over. And if these things are wrong, then there should be a lot more than Chauvin and a few officers who went down for this. I mean, all these lawmakers, city managers, mayors who authorize use of these techniques. And we're talking about throughout the entire state, all these police departments that have been using these techniques on people. Now you decide that maybe, just maybe that this is not the right way to do this after someone's dead. So there should be a lot more people taking a fall for this if it was wrong than just a few officers, a handful of officers. So get involved.
This issue was forced, Jimmy, because the police departments they took their staff out of schools, and so they just stopped supporting the schools, and so that's kind of what forced them on this.
Well, Tom, like I said, get involved with your review boards, get involved with your local politics, understand how your officers are being trained to deal with, especially when they have to use force against someone or deadly force. So you have some say in this at the local level. Get involved, and if you don't, then when they do what they were trained to do and it doesn't work out the way we expect, and something bad happens, that's not the time to be protesting and getting upset and burning things down. It's too late at that point because someone's dead. So the time to get involved is before someone dies. And as far as the interaction with the kids, Tom, I guess if the police don't want to cover the schools, then the school districts should go out and hire private security guards.
That's my thought.
So you can control what they do and what tasks they and how they administer their duties, but you don't have to necessarily use because it's not like the public officers are free. I mean, the police force charge the school district for those services of the officer. They bill it to them. So take that money that you're paying your local police department and hire your own security force. Some school districts have their own security departments. I know here in Texas, I've seen the colleges with their own police departments. I'm not sure if I've seen any maybe a few school districts even have
some school districts.
Their own police department.
Actually, Jimmy, in Cedar Hill High School, a fraternity brother of ours, 06, actually is the chief of police at Cedar Hill High School, which is one of the larger suburban high school districts. But he is the chief of police at Cedar Hill High School, and so there are some schools and some school districts who do have their own police.
Do that. So get your own police department. You don't have to necessarily depend on the your local police department. Develop your own for your school district. That way, you can control and write the rules for how they do their job.
Absolutely. Want to acknowledge Celia Reese, who just joined the chat line. Want to thank you
Celia in
for
the house.
joining us, Miss Celia Reese. And Miss Dominique Vines did, out of Atlanta, said, she will reserve her comments until after the judge rules on the future as a DA and on the case as
I
well.
was
So,
kind of waiting for that also, because I haven't said anything about it in a couple
right.
of weeks on this show or any other. Well, I mentioned a little bit on this show, but I have some other podcasts that I do that I haven't mentioned. I've been kind of waiting to hear what the judge have to say.
Well, it's been great for, of course, the mass media, because they've had something to talk about, to sensationalize over the last several weeks. And so I know they're going to try to do the best that they can to kind of, stretch this out as long as they can, because they, need something to report. They can't find very much original. So they're hoping to stretch this out, I'm pretty sure.
Well, Tom, and plus, black drama seems to be a little more exciting in as far as news, salacious news.
Well, they seem to report it, Jimmy, more so than anything else.
Because it's probably more entertaining.
There's drama that go across the board, but they just seem to report on things that are going on within certain communities more than they do others for some reason, even though they may represent only 14% of the population.
And I know the Georgia Senate had a hearing today where they brought in Ashley Merchant, who's a lawyer for one of the defendants, and she brought more evidence.
Why don't we do this, Jimmy? It's right at 41. Let's show our second history clip, and then let's talk about the Fani Willis case a little bit. So why don't we do that, and then we can talk about that, and then that probably gives us enough time before we have to close out for this evening.
So hopefully you wreck, lady. Hopefully we all do.
Oh, if you don't, you've been on.
Born in 1922, Ruby Dee emerged as a powerhouse in the world of entertainment and activism. From her early days on the stage to becoming a beloved presence in film and television, Ruby Dee's journey is nothing short of inspirational. Her career began to flourish on Broadway, where her dynamic performances captivated audiences. From South Pacific to A Raisin in the Sun, Dee's presence on the stage was magnetic and groundbreaking.
All right. The great Ruby Dee. And I mean, it's hard to even say Ruby Dee, Jimmy, without Ossie Davis.
It's hard to, Tom. They were such a power couple. So, and Tom, you really have to look at their history, not just them, but so many other celebrity types. This is what is so disappointing for me, Tom, in our current day celebrity class, because when I look at the history of black celebrities in the past generation, all of them, Tom, heavily influenced in the civil rights movement. They back Martin Luther King. They back Malcolm X. They use their money, their resources, their influence to help shape. Even when it was a detriment to them, they could lose their career. They could be blacklisted from roles, which are hard to come by. But Tom, they were willing to do this and speak up, despite what it would cost them. And to see these celebrity types today, they can't speak out on anything. They can't get involved. Everybody's afraid of losing their contract, their sponsor. And I'm not saying speak up for radical things like mutilating kids with this gender fluidity. I'm saying sensible things like just get out and vote, register, fight for better schools in the inner city, maybe school choice, charter schools, where it's been shown that they do a much better job of educating black kids in public schools. The fight, Tom, the fact that we had to fight so hard to keep urban prep open up in Chicago when they were trying to shut it down. And that's been the most successful charter school in America in our lifetime, probably, that educate inner city troubled black boys. So, and rather than go find Brother King and make him the czar to educate black boys, I'll put him in control of all the charter schools, to let him manage them or set them up and run them in the inner city exclusively for black boys that are in trouble, because he seemed to understand how to educate them where everyone else has given up on them. But these are things we need to speak up for, Tom, and we don't. In our celebrity class, man, they just seem to be trying to stuff their pockets with as much money as they can, and they don't look back. And that's sad, Tom, because compared to what celebrities of the past were willing to do and give up and sacrifice to speak up on behalf of black people.
Jimmy, I would have to agree with you on that, and I think that part of the issue is black media. I think that when we look at the 20th century, obviously it was very much a physical print, paper-driven black media. A lot of our media companies, one of which we talked about last week, the Philadelphia Inquirer. We've lost a lot of the national and or regional newspapers that were speaking our voice to our communities. And unfortunately, Jimmy, lack of access to capital, lack of ability to be able to change to a more digital environment. We lost a lot of our traditional newspapers that were our voice. I guess the good news, in a way, is that with social media, with the internet, you have the democratization of news. But, with that kind of comes some challenges and some change with that, Jimmy, being able to discriminate between fact versus fiction. But this is the way I see it. I remember growing up, Jimmy, when I was very young, and I even watch it to this day, 60 Minutes. I said there are two people that you don't want coming knocking at your door. One is the FBI, and the other one is 60 Minutes, because they've done their research before they get to you. But there are a few traditional black media companies out there that are still in existence, but we've lost the majority of them. And at some point in time, just like we've talked about with our historically black colleges and universities, we may have to consolidate in order to find a larger channel that is strong and nationwide. We've probably not talked about the, I'm trying to think of the name of the paper. Used to be called Muhammad Speaks. With the Nation of Islam. Obviously, they were an alternative newspaper to the traditional newspaper, that we saw, Jimmy. But we have got to figure out how to consolidate our resources and be respectful of differences of opinion so that we can build a larger economy and a larger channel of news that will speak our truth, not mainstream truth, because at the end of the day, we're typically going to tell our story a little bit differently, and it's going to come from our point of view.
Well, let me say this. There's going to be a plug for the two of us, Tom. If there are any media outlets out there, traditional print, that need help, my co-host, Tommy Donkin, hopefully this is nothing to that's secret for your background, but, he does have an MBA, so he's very knowledgeable business-wise. I believe you have a computer science engineering degree from A&M also. So a technical person. I have an electrical engineering degree. And I think between the two of us, Tom, if there are any of the traditional black newspapers out there that were having some difficulty transitioning to the new media format, with either setting up a blog online or a video blog if they wanted to get into a media channel, or on how to get into the digital age, feel free to come on this show, request some help, and Black Men Speak will be glad to work with you in helping you develop a roadmap to a transition plan. And so we would do this, Tom, because it's in our best interest to help these outlets grow and transition rather than watch them down the vine.
That's true, Jimmy. And I think also we have to embrace partnerships. We've got Ed Gray, with the commish. We support each. We
have a ton of Uncle Amar. We have folks on here that have the kind of knowledge.
Al-Kabelan and African Genius podcast. He has more of an international view of things, but establishing these partnerships and being able to share that content. And that's why we've had Ed on our show. We've had Asar on our show so that we can establish these partnerships and get a broader footprint of our shows.
It may not be realistic, Tom, to have a news bureau around the world. We're not CNN, so nobody's asking you to do that. But you're right. We do have some tentacles of people out there that have access to news. Like I said, the commission, Uncle Sar, and probably some others out there that if we can connect, you have sources of information that can come from around the country and internationally from around the world. We just need to tap into and stop making excuses for why we can't come together and do something. So I'm putting a challenge out there for anyone out there who's connected to any of these news organizations that are struggling, making the transition to the digital world, that Black Men Speak is willing to help you out, help you develop a plan, and put you in contact with others who are in the digital world, that we can all partner together for content and find a way to work together.
All right, now let's go to our last story of the day. And I know this is kind of a follow-on, and we're kind of in a wait-and-see situation, of course, with what's going on in Fulton County with Fani Willis. And it's kind of an ongoing story, Jimmy, until, we find out what's going on. But, I don't think that there's probably anybody out there who doesn't, I don't think, know what's going on by now. But, as of more recent, the lawyer, Ashley Merchant, who is seeking to remove Fani Willis from the Georgia election interference case against Donald Trump, walked state lawmakers through her investigation into why she believes it creates a conflict of interest for her to have responsibility for this case. She was subpoenaed to appear in court, subpoenaed to appear in front of Congress. State Senate committee tasked with investigating whether Willis engaged in misconduct. Willis's history with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, whom she hired to manage the election interference case, was first exposed in a motion filed on January 8th by Merchant that seeks to toss out the indictment and bar Willis from continuing with the case. Georgia Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee is expected to rule by the end of next week on whether to disqualify Willis and her office from the case that accuses Trump and others of illegally trying to overturn the former president's loss to Democrat Joe Biden in 2020 in the state of Georgia. So this is an ongoing thing. Obviously, there's a lot of sensationalization and, a lot of things to talk about here, Jimmy, but we won't really know what happens until maybe another week or so.
Well, the judge most likely is going to rule that there are some conflicts there, but those conflicts don't necessarily mean that they can't prosecute this case fairly. But the thing is that, if you base it on the appearance of impropriety, then they should probably be removed. But if you base it on a money conflict that maybe she gained something out of, which she did, and she was supposed to report it, so it's just sloppy paperwork on her part. But I don't think a person who makes over $200,000 a year that she does as the county prosecutor, plus another undisclosed amount that she gets from the state for being a state prosecutor, would actually hatch a scheme to save a few $1,000s on travel expenses. Yeah. So, but the fact still remain that she did accept the gift, and it was that from someone that she was sleeping with, was in a relationship with, and that worked for her. The very thing that she said she wouldn't do because her predecessor that she ran against did these things. And so this just goes to show, Tom, that
maybe it goes to show that that's just Georgia culture, huh?
It is Georgia culture, and that's unfortunate because what people say, that's just the way things are done in Fulton County there.
But Jimmy, it's interesting that you say that because you spent some time in Louisiana. But yeah. I remember talking to people in Louisiana, and they said, you know what? If you don't drink and do certain things in Louisiana, I don't even really trust you. So maybe Georgia's got some unwritten codes of ethics there, just like Louisiana does.
Well, Tom, we need to be above that, if that is the case, if that is the culture. We need to make sure that we're above that because when other people get caught, it may not be that big of a story. But now we see how big of a story this is from sloppy invoices on the part of Wade, by her circumventing getting permission from the county to even hire him, which she's supposed to do by law. How much he's making 4 times more than the other 2 lawyers combined. And it's like, what do you have to show work product wise for all this work that you're doing in billing the county for almost $700,000 over 2 years? And his answer is he doesn't have any work. He doesn't have any notes, no file folder, nothing except your invoices, which just show meetings and work product, but no one knows what the work product is, and you can't produce it. I mean, it's just sloppiness like that make us look bad. And maybe there's nothing nefarious other than they lied about a sexual relationship that they had. But the cover-up is always, if you go back to Watergate, Nixon didn't break into the Watergate Hotel. I'm not even sure Nixon ordered anyone to do this. But the fact that you were trying to cover it up from people who were doing what they thought would help you and keep them out of trouble made things worse. And the cover-up here is 10 times worse than the actual crime. This is why and my wife jokes with me about this because I always say when these things happen, Tom, when it's just a little pocket knife of a problem, that's the time to fall on the pocket knife and just apologize, say I was wrong. I'll clean it up. I'll make up for it. Whatever I have to do, done. Don't wait till it's a sword that's 4 feet long, and now when you have to fall on that, it's death.
4 feet long, Jimmy.
Yeah, 4 feet long, man. Don't wait till it grow to a 4 feet long sword while it's still just a little pocket knife.
You're talking about a harpoon now. Fall on a harpoon versus a pocket knife.
Yeah, just when it's small, fall on it then. Just the American public, especially black people, are very forgiving. If a person just says they're sorry,
black people in particular, we are very forgiving.
we are very forgiving. Accept responsibility and apologize, and this story goes away. You know, when I look at the Secretary of Defense, can't think of his name now. I just had it in my head and it just popped out. I did a Biden. When he disappeared to have his surgery, and then he didn't let anyone know. This became a story and it started growing. But you know what? He came out. He admitted what he did. He accepted responsibility.
He apologized and accepted
He
responsibility.
apologized, and guess what? Story just went away. We don't even talk about it anymore. So this is what they should have did early on. Just accept responsibility and apologize, and this would have been dead months ago. But you kept.
I mean, I guess because of the gravity of the case, the question is, do you think it really would have gone away because of the gravity of the case?
Tom, the story that we're talking about now would have been a moot issue. She could have canceled the contract with Wade, her boo, and she could have just recused herself and stepped aside. She got 100 prosecutors to work in her office. Pick one of them to take charge of the case. Go out and hire another contract attorney if you have to. But it's interesting to me, Tom, that her predecessor wouldn't touch this. Nobody in the office with over 100 prosecutors would touch it, and nobody in her staff would touch it either. That she had to go out and hire contract prosecutors to take the case because everyone is saying that trying to charge us as a RICO under that umbrella was a stretch. There's no way she was going to make this work, especially in the time frame that she's trying to make it work is going to be impossible. So most likely, if she is removed from the case, most likely no one in Georgia is going to. When they look at it, they may file a case here or there for some violation, but the RICO part of the umbrella to try to wrap them all up together is not going to stick and it'll probably go away.
You know, you bring up some very salient points. I mean, I think, this is potentially would have been a career-defining case, but I guess what we always have to understand, history does repeat itself, and especially if you're in this country, and if you have been kissed by nature's son, you have to understand that you've got to be squeaky clean. And even when you are squeaky clean, they're going to still come after you, Jimmy. You got to know they're going to come after you.
Tom, you got to be so clean you can eat off the floor.
Clorox,
that's how clean you got to be.
As they would say, clean as Clorox, Jimmy.
I mean, you can't be, Tom, you can't go after a former president and then 18 other people, all of whom are lawyers and very powerful people, except for one bail bondsman that you got wrapped up also. But this is a close-knit fraternity, Tom, sorority group of people. They're all friends with each other. They campaign and contribute to each other. They hook each other up with contracts and work. Tom, you can't, if you're going to be in the club, you got to be in the club. If you're going to go against the club, then you can't be in the club doing dirt because all these people know your dirt. The people who testify
now, I understand that they did this, but if they go to the strip club, you can't go to the strip club.
If you go with them, then you got to keep your mouth shut. You can't be pointing the finger at them for going to the strip club, and you in there making it rain with your dollar bills. So I'm like, what were they thinking about with some of these people in Georgia, especially when they're all saying how close they were with each other, friends, helping people campaign, contributing money. My kids are wearing your shirts, knocking on doors. Wait a minute. With this kind of friendship going on, and y'all in court now over this? Tom, if you're going to be in the club, you got to be in the club. I'm not sure why she thought she could bring this case and that none of these people were going to turn on her because it's all lawyers who are turning on her. Terrence Bradley is a lawyer. the Ashley Merchant, well, she got to represent her client, but she's testifying against you. There's another lady who's a DA, deputy DA over in Cobb County. She's testifying now about what she heard and what Terrence Bradley told her. There's a law professor who's testifying. All these are lawyers who are coming out now speaking up. So and all you guys know each other. You're all friends with each other. Gotcha. And so they're probably thinking you have betrayed us, the little clique here, by putting us in this position and exposing some of our wrongdoing. So they're going to turn on her. They're turning on her now. I'm not sure how this ends well for her when, even if she gets past this with the judge, she's still facing a state investigation. And then there's a whistleblower who said they misappropriated almost $500,000 in federal fund. So the Congress is going after her also. I doubt that Jim Crow Joe will have the DOJ come after her. But if Trump is elected in November, guess what? You don't think they're going to dust this off and say, wait a minute, she misappropriated federal funds? Yeah, it's time to revisit that case because the statute of limitation has not gone out. So guess who's going to get indicted for that? Fani Willis.
That being said, Jimmy, we are right at the top of the hour, Jimmy.
Yes, so we are, Tom.
So we're going to continue to
besides Cam.
No, but I think we're good. We didn't have any other sports, Jimmy, but we are right at the top of the hour, Jimmy. So we're going to continue to keep our eye on this. We're going to give you an update as it comes and see where this whole thing goes. But we want to thank everyone for joining us and supporting us tonight.
Before we turn off, do we have confirmation that we're doing the All Ladies show next week? Or we still
I can't say this next week, but we will let folks know in advance when we do the women's issues show.
Yes. Okay. All right. It's on the planning board, ladies. Well, everyone.
All right, folks. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.